For this episode of the Build Beyond podcast, I want to talk about barriers to physical fitness and routine physical activity. I talk about physical fitness and physical activity a lot on this podcast. You might wonder why. I'm a chiropractor, so you'd think I would be talking about hands-on therapies more than I do. I think if I just conceptualize myself and I put myself in a box and I am a chiropractor, I tend to miss the bigger picture. And the bigger picture is that I'm a healthcare provider. So my primary goal is thinking about healthcare. So for example, if someone comes in and they've got low back pain, but there are things in their health history and their physical exam and in the conversation that make me think that they have some chronic disease going on that maybe hasn't been diagnosed, then the low back pain is less of a priority and their health care is more of a priority. And it's not something that I can diagnose or treat, but I would need to investigate and explain and do whatever I can to connect that person with the appropriate healthcare provider. So when I think about things just as a healthcare provider that are also within my scope as a chiropractor, what are the things that I can do, that I can contribute to my patients and to my community that are going to have lasting effects on healthcare beyond pain management? And that's why I talk about physical activity so much, because physical activity and exercise, so I'm talking about anything from walking around the block to gardening to recreational sports to competitive sports to strength training to cycling to yoga, Pilates, pickleball, you name it. Increasing physical activity, the benefits are broad. I think they span across a wide spectrum of health. And increasing physical activity is almost like a miracle drug, if it was a drug. So increasing your physical activity can improve your mood, and it can improve your sleep. It can slow the effects of aging. So what does that mean? Well, we could increase or maintain relatively high levels of lean muscle mass. We can improve or maintain joint mobility. We can look at, if we think about maintaining or improving joint mobility and putting on lean muscle mass, we are working kind of in the opposite direction of things that we commonly associate with arthritic changes. So those would be loss of joint space, loss of movement, general weakness. So we can slow the effects of aging by doing all of those things. We can also slow the effects of aging because increasing movement and maintaining relatively high levels of movement has an effect on the brain. So we can decrease your risk for dementia and Alzheimer's. We can boost your memory, especially as you get older. But even when you're younger, if you're looking at retention, if you're a student or you're just someone who's trying to keep that grocery list in your head long enough to get through your day with kids, wanting toys and different things like that, and you've got all these other things on your mind. So keeping your mind sharp, whether you're old or you're young, you can reduce your risk for things like heart disease, type 2 diabetes, and some kinds of cancer. You can affect your immune system. So you can lessen your rate of infections. Ideally, you can speed up your recovery from infection. You can lessen the symptoms. So when you get hit, you don't get hit quite as hard because you're a more robust person. You can boost your energy levels, and who doesn't want more energy? And it really just makes your life better. Okay. Now, if that list sounds familiar, that is almost verbatim from the American College of Sports Medicine. And they didn't make that up. I think that's all based on data from other sources and other studies. So that's why I talk about physical activity and exercise so much. Now, on top of all of that awesome stuff that I just mentioned, physical activity and exercise are one of the best things for pain management, which is why people come to see me for the most part. They want to manage their pain, and then they want to get back to doing the fun stuff and the important stuff that the pain has been either stopping them from doing or been hindering in some way. So we have a lot of things for pain management at our disposal. There's a lot of things within my scope of practice. The interesting thing is that if you look at the body of research out there, it doesn't seem like we have anything that works better than anything else. Now, as an individual, you may say, well, this worked for me and this didn't. So if we're talking about individuals, yes, people are going to have different preferences. People's bodies are different. Their lifestyles are different. But if we look at a large population or multiple studies of large populations, it seems like nothing is going to outperform anything else. And that can be discouraging, but it can be encouraging because it leaves us a bunch of options. So we can line up all of our options on the table. Let's say you've got joint pain, maybe low back. Let's say you've got low back pain, hip pain, and knee pain, and you got that elbow thing going on. So you're like me, you're someone in your 40s or your 50s, and just a lot of things hurt and they're bothering you. Well, what options do you have? You can have hands-on therapy, so you can have massage or other forms of soft tissue therapy. You can have joint manipulation, so you can get something cracked by a chiropractor or mobilized. You can have dry needling. You can have acupuncture. They are different. They would look similar if you're just watching because needles are going in, but the methodologies behind the practices are quite different. You could go with modalities. So we could talk about laser therapy. We could talk about shockwave, E-stim, TENS units. I don't know, all different kinds of things. You've got thermal, you got heat and cold. You've got, oh man, there are so many different things. You've got all kinds of supplements out there. You name it. I'm probably not even scratching the surface. We have all of these options. Hold on one second. My dog's trying to get in. All right, I'm back. My dog was scratching on the door. So you have all of these options. One other option that we can add to that list is movement. Walking, cardio, strength training, Pilates, yoga, whatever kind of movement-based therapy. And you might think, well, movement hurts. Well, you have so many different options with movement, with physical activity and exercise. The interesting thing is that physical activity and exercise in all of its variety tends to do just as well as anything else if you're looking at pain management. You're looking at a large enough population. But then when you look at this list of all of your possibilities, you think, okay, everything works about the same. I can try any one of these things or multiple of these things. But out of all of these things, is there anything where I get more bang for my buck? Is there anything where I can kill two birds with one stone? Is there any way that I can go and do whatever it is for my pain management that's going to be effective, but also get other benefits on the back end? And sadly, with most of that crosses off most things off the list. What it leaves on there are things like physical activity, exercise, strength training, cardio, Pilates, yoga, things like that. And I'll throw in nutrition as well, because I think that can have a huge effect on pain and obviously can have a huge effect on health. Something else that's on there is sleep. If you're not sleeping well and you've got joint pain and you think, well, the joint pain is what's affecting my sleep. Well, we're stuck in this cycle then. And if we could find a way to get you better sleep, almost always that joint pain is going to improve. So we've got things like physical activity, exercise, we've got sleep, we've got nutrition, stress management is a big one, stress, anxiety, depression. Again, these are things I don't treat, but I have to recognize that these could be a problem, because if you're super stressed out and you're in pain, it's going to be really hard to manage that pain if you're not getting help with the stress. So a lot of these things are not, I think when you would go to a chiropractor, it's not typically things you're going to think that they're going to talk about. You might get a pamphlet on exercise and food. They might sell you some supplements. They might, manage your stress, but you're going to get that hands-on care. It's just not the way I practice. So this is why I talk about physical activity and exercise so much and why I think it's so valuable. because it is really effective for pain management, as effective as anything else. And you get all of the other benefits: improve mood, improve sleep, slow the effect of aging, reduce risk of heart attack, type 2 diabetes, some kinds of cancer, boosting your immune system, reducing your risk for Alzheimer's and dementia, improving your energy levels, boosting your retention, your cognitive function, and then just making your life better because it's making you more capable, more robust. So you get all of these other benefits. Now, this episode, I want to address why people don't exercise and why people aren't physically active. Hold on one second. My dog now wants to leave the room. So why don't people exercise and move more? I think we have a problem, at least in the United States, with low physical activity levels. At least it seems that way. I've seen different stats, but it's something around the vast majority of Americans are not meeting physical activity guidelines. And I'm not going to go over the physical activity guidelines in this podcast, but let's just, for the sake of this podcast, assume that I'm right. Maybe I'm wrong. If I'm wrong, let me know. But a lot of people in the United States are not meeting physical activity guidelines. But if we went around and we found, you just go out on the street and you find 1,000 people and you ask them, do you think routine physical activity and exercise is beneficial for your health? And they would say yes. I would imagine you would get 100% people would say yes. And then if you showed them the guidelines, you say, are you meeting these guidelines? And most people are going to say no. So it's not a lack of knowledge. People know, but they don't do it. So then here's the problem solving that goes through my mind. So if someone comes in and they want my help, and I'm thinking, okay, yeah, you got knee pain, you got low back pain, you got shoulder pain, whatever's going on. We'll look at that joint. We'll look at the joints above and below. We'll think about the things that you want to do, but I got to take a step back as a healthcare provider and look at you as a human and look at the whole system and asking the question, is this a healthy person? How do I know that they're healthy? Well, I can just look at all of the things that we know right now to be important for people to maintain health. And one of those is physical activity. So I just have a conversation. What are their physical activity levels? How many steps a day do they take? Have we measured it? Could we measure it? Do they resistance train? Do they work out? Do they do any cardio? Do they play any sports? Are there any activities? What's their physical activity profile? And if it doesn't look like they're in that realm of meeting physical activity, well, then we can start to say, well, could my treatment for the knee pain or the low back pain or the shoulder pain, could that treatment increase their physical activity levels? If so, we're double dipping. We're working towards pain management, getting them back to doing what they want to do, and we are having them move more. This is an interesting thing because I know, this is from my experience, that a lot of healthcare providers, chiropractors included, tell people to reduce physical activity. Oh, you're in pain, you should rest, or you shouldn't do that anymore. They make people afraid to move. And I think that's a problem, right? Because is it worth it to increase your risk for heart disease because you've got a meniscus problem? I don't think that makes much sense, right? We don't want premature death because you have knee pain. It doesn't make it's not logical. And I know people don't think about this because it makes sense. If something hurts, we should rest. And maybe that's a good idea for a day or two, maybe a week. Let the pain calm down, regroup, make up a plan, and then get moving. But people will be told to rest, and then 20 years later, they're still not doing things. And that list of things that they're not doing just gets longer and longer and longer. And I'll have people come to me in their 60s that can't take a knee. They can't squat to full depth. They're not strong enough to do a push-up. They don't have joint mobility. And they have this laundry list of things that they don't do. And systematically throughout their lives, things have happened, and they've either been told to rest or to not do that, or they've just made that decision And there's some logic behind it, but they've lost those capabilities because if you don't use it, you do tend to lose it. So then we got to try and get those things back. But that's hard, right? And that's part of my job. I like doing it. But what I'm trying to say now is that when we're looking, if you're in that situation, we can work on the pain, we can work on the mobility, we can work on getting you back to the activities that you want, and we can incorporate movement and increase your overall physical activity and then decrease risk for all that stuff that you don't want. That's why it's so valuable. So what are the barriers then to routine physical activity? I have this conversation a lot, I've had for years. The number one thing that comes up when someone says, I know I need to move more, and maybe I ask, well, what's preventing you? The number one, I think most common answer that I get is that I don't have time. People are busy. It's a lack of time, and I get that. It's a lot of people, it's very hard to schedule gym time. But how long do you think it would take me to lean up against this desk and do 10 push-ups off the desk? 10 seconds, 15 seconds, maybe? It would be the same for you. So if you're sitting there thinking, I don't have time, you don't have 15 seconds once a day? I guarantee you do. And that's really not a big energy expenditure. So you think about 10 push-ups a day for 365 days. That's a lot of push-ups. We can make some gains there. We can start thinking about habit stacking too. So maybe you brush your teeth twice a day, you lean up against the counter and you knock out push-ups twice a day. And maybe every time you use the restroom, when you get done, you wash your hands and then you lean up against the counter and you do push-ups. I don't know. I'm just using push-ups as an example. But for the people who say, I don't have time, that's an easy hurdle to get over. Easy is maybe it's a simple hurdle to get over. So once we work through that, the next most common thing I hear is, well, I don't know what to do. So if I earmark the time, I'm not really sure how to use that time effectively. Now, I will say, my first thing is that if you're not currently exercising and you just add in any exercise, don't worry about it. It really doesn't matter. Do anything and you're going to get better. If you cut wood, you make sawdust. Guaranteed. So if you're not exercising, you start exercising, I wouldn't worry about what you do. Just do stuff. Do something that is either convenient or is entertaining or something that you hate the least and that you'll do consistently. You will improve. Another thing that we don't appreciate is that we've never had greater access to information than we do. Most people have a smartphone at this point. Most people have internet access. You can get on YouTube and find everything you want. When we point that out, the next objection is, well, there's too much information. How do I filter? How do I know what's good and what's not good? And again, I will go back. If you're not currently exercising and we add in routine exercise, you're golden. You're already winning. It doesn't really matter what you do. Find a YouTube channel or YouTube channels that you like and follow along and just enjoy it. And we can refine as you go. And that, for most people, answers those two questions. We've made the time, we've found the YouTube channels that you like, you carve it out, or you're doing whatever exercise or movement that you want to be able to do, and you're making it work. You're habit stacking. Now all we have to do is continue to do this long enough to get the results that you want. If we go a little bit further, if that hasn't solved your problem, and we go a little bit further and you're still reluctant to do this exercise and movement thing, then the next most common objection, I think, is the hardest one to talk about because it's a lack of confidence in yourself. So a lot of people don't like the way they look, and they don't like their bodies. They don't like the way their bodies move. To them, it is embarrassing to show up to a gym because they don't want people looking at them. They don't want people judging them. And even if someone's not going to go to a gym, they will judge themselves. They'll be so hard. The inner critic is so harsh, and there's shame involved. There's a lot of things going on mentally that are going to prevent that. This is a tough one. And I think working on this is, I don't really have a go-to for this. It's so individual with each person. But if this speaks to you, one thing you need to realize is that most people in the gym don't know what they're doing. And it doesn't matter how fit they look, they're hoping that nobody looks at them and judges them. Actually, some of the fitter people are probably some of the more self-conscious. So I would say that the vast majority of the people in a gym environment don't want to be judged. They don't want you to judge them. So they feel the same way you do. There's a small percentage of people in there who are going to judge you. I'm not going to lie about that. But those people are everywhere. They're in the grocery store. They're going to judge you in the gym. Guess what? When you go shopping, they're judging you. Those types of people. You can't escape from that. That's life. There are just judgmental people out there who are going to say rude things or stare or make you feel uncomfortable. I can't do anything about that. Neither can you. But I don't want that to be the barrier to stopping you from living the life that you want to live. And we can work around that because you don't necessarily have to go to a gym. But I think that lack of confidence, people don't like the way their bodies look. They don't like the way their bodies feel. They don't like the way their bodies perform. And they've tried things before and they've always failed. So there's a lack of confidence in themselves that they're even going to stick with the plan. And so that's even a hard thing. So someone might say, well, I'm going to go hire a coach, a personal trainer. I'm going to go to a healthcare provider. I'm going to get some guidance. I think some people still feel like, well, what's the point? I'm not going to stick with their plan anyway. I never do. And that's a hard one. I think that's probably the hardest problem for me to solve as a healthcare provider is how do I keep people engaged and have this positive mental attitude and keep them on a plan and a path long enough to get what they want. I'm not great at it, but I am constantly getting better. And that has nothing to do with exercise. It has very little to do with exercise selection or seminars. It's more of a communication thing. It's a relationship building thing. So people have to know that I've got their back and that we're working towards something that's unique to them and something that's important to them. So these are the barriers to physical fitness, the three main ones that I see. And the problem that I have with healthcare providers and coaches, not all of them, but in general, is that if someone crosses and gets over all of those barriers, they move around those hurdles and they go, okay, I don't have time, but I'm going to make time. And then they go, I don't know what to do, so I'm going to go hire a coach or a trainer or a healthcare provider. And I'm going to go do this. And then if that coach or healthcare provider or trainer makes things more difficult than they need to be. And this is the debate on technique. And so I used to think there's good technique and there's bad technique. I don't think that anymore because that only gives you two options. If you don't have good technique, you have to have bad technique. And that's going to keep some people from trying because they're going to be afraid. So rather than think about this vertical line, and on the right you have good technique and the left you have bad technique, we flip that line horizontally and it's more of like a spectrum. So you've got more optimal technique at one end and you've got less optimal technique at the other end. For any exercise on any given day, you're somewhere on that spectrum and we're just going to try and move you towards more optimal. And that's it. So it doesn't mean that you have to have bad technique if you're new to anything to get going. So if you're new to exercise and you're new to something and you're excited about it and you're worried about having bad technique, you shouldn't worry about it because you 100% will have bad technique. It doesn't matter. It's going to be less optimal than what we want it to be, but that's okay. We expect that. And we practice and we work through this. And this is one problem that I have with I don't know, maybe a certain section of people is that they have these rigid standards of technique. Now there are rigid standards if you're doing a sport or if you're trying to compete at CrossFit, well, CrossFit has rigid standards because especially the sport of CrossFit. So you've got to meet those standards. It's the same thing if you wanted to compete at powerlifting, there are rigid standards. If you want to go play soccer, there are standards that you have to follow. So if you're trying to do a sport, yes, there are going to be some more rigid standards, but we can still ease you into that. If you're just trying to use elements of that sport, so you don't want to be a power lifter, but you want to bench press or you want a back squat, great. You don't have to have a competition ready squat to start training. We will reduce the load. We'll spend more time on technique. It'll be fine. And practicing the technique, if you're new, is going to be enough. You're going to be sore anyway. So we can ease you into that. So what I get frustrated with other coaches sometimes and other healthcare providers is that I'll have someone, they have all of these hurdles already out there in existence. They have a lack of time. They have too much information and they don't know how to filter it. They have a lack of confidence. They've got other things going on in their life. All of these hurdles, they get over all of those and they come to you or me for help. And then we just make up new hurdles, and it's just, I don't know. And maybe you don't have any idea what I'm talking about, but it's if you see those Instagram videos where they'll show some exercise and then they'll put a big red X on it and they'll show you how to do it right. And I look at those sometimes and there's a minute detail. Yeah, if you're trying to win the Olympics, that's important. If you're trying to get to where you can lift heavy weight and you want to do 1 rep maxes, yes, those things are going to be important. I'm not saying that technique is not important. And I think the value that I love about working on technique is that it's entertaining, because we basically set a goal. This is ultimately what we want your squat to look like. We're going to work towards that goal, and we can have some success. It's not just doing activity, it's developing a skill, and then developing a set of skills, and then combining those skills to do more challenging and more fun things, and then seeing how those skills translate outside of the gym into sport or everyday life or whatever it is that you want to be able to do. So technique is really valuable, but early on, having rigid technique standards can be another barrier that we just as healthcare providers or as coaches implement on or put onto people. So for the most part, if someone's not moving and they're in pain, I need to get them moving. And if the pain doesn't necessarily get better right away, but it doesn't get worse, we're winning, because we're increasing physical activity and we're not making the pain worse. So that's a win. We got to keep going with that. So those are my thoughts on this subject. As always, I appreciate you listening. This was something that I had been thinking about. I think I saw something on Instagram, and I don't remember what it was, but I was driving in the car, dropping my kids off at school, and this idea, I don't know, I kind of ran through this podcast topic in my head, and I felt like I had to get it out there. So this is very stream of consciousness. If you're still listening, I appreciate you. Thank you for listening to the podcast. And look forward to the next episode. All right, thanks.